The rain hammered against the kitchen window, like tiny fists demanding entry, each drop a sharp reminder of how small I'd become in this vast, indifferent city. My fingers trembled as I scrubbed at the stubborn wine stain on the marble counter, the ammonia burning my nostrils, mixing with the lingering scent of expensive cigars and leather that still clung to the air from tonight's private event. 3 years in New York, and I was still just another invisible hand keeping the machine running, cleaning up after people who would never see my face. The restaurant had emptied hours ago, but I remained as always, finishing what others left behind. My back ached, a dull throb that had become my constant companion since I'd picked up the double shifts. The black uniform they made us wear hung loose on my frame now. I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose, surviving on coffee and whatever the kitchen staff didn't throw away at closing. I was so focused on the stain that I didn't hear him enter. "You missed a spot." The voice cut through the silence like a blade. Smooth, dark, and laced with something that made every hair on my body stand at attention. I spun around, my heart lurching into my throat, the cleaning rag falling from my suddenly numb fingers. He stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the private dining room, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Everything about him screamed danger dressed in a $10,000 suit. The fabric clung to broad shoulders with the kind of precision that only came from custom tailoring, charcoal gray that somehow managed to look black in the dim kitchen light. His presence filled the space in a way that had nothing to do with his height, though he was tall, easily over 6 feet, and everything to do with the raw power that emanated from him like heat from a flame, but it was his face that made my breath catch. Young, maybe early 30s, with sharp aristocratic features that belonged on a Renaissance sculpture. Dark hair swept back from a face too beautiful to be real, except for the eyes. God, those eyes. They were the color of whiskey held up to firelight, amber and gold and absolutely merciless as they fixed on me with an intensity that made me want to run and stay perfectly still at the same time. I'm sorry, sir. The restaurant is closed. My voice came out smaller than I intended, swallowed by the vast space between us. He didn't move, but somehow the air grew thicker. Behind him, I caught movement, a shadow that resolved into a man built like a concrete wall, dressed in black, his hand resting casually near his jacket, in a way that made my stomach clench. Security. The kind that didn't ask questions before acting. "I'm aware." He took a step forward, and I instinctively backed against the counter, my hip hitting the edge hard enough to bruise. "I own the building." Of course he did. Men like him owned everything. The scent of him reached me then, expensive cologne, something with notes of cedar and smoke, underlaid with something darker, more primal. It wrapped around my senses like silk, foreign and intoxicating in a way that terrified me. I'd spent my entire life around people who smelled like sweat and desperation. This was different. This was the scent of power, of money, of a world I could never touch. "I was just finishing up," I managed, my fingers gripping the counter behind me for support. "I'll be out of your way in... What's your name?" The question stopped me cold. Men like him didn't ask for names. We were faces that blurred together, interchangeable parts in their perfect machines. "Sophia," I whispered, and hated how small it sounded in the cavernous kitchen. He tilted his head slightly, studying me with those predatory eyes, and I felt stripped bare under his gaze. My cheap shoes with the worn soles, the uniform that had seen better days, the exhaustion I couldn't hide no matter how much concealer I used, he saw all of it. And instead of the dismissal I expected, something flickered in those amber depths. Interest. Attention. The kind that made prey freeze in the headlights. "Sophia." He repeated my name like he was tasting it, rolling it around in his mouth to test its flavor. "Do you know who I am?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. But that was a lie, wasn't it? Because even as I stood there, trapped between him and the cold marble at my back, pieces were clicking together, the private dining room that had been closed all night. The men in suits who'd arrived in black cars with windows too dark to see through. The kitchen staff who'd gone pale and silent when they served the meal, moving with a fear I'd attributed to the importance of the guests. The way everyone had vanished the moment the party ended, leaving only me, stupid, oblivious me, to clean up alone. My name is Dante Moretti. He took another step closer, and the space between us evaporated into nothing. I could see the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his tie sat perfectly against his throat, the gleam of a watch that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years. And you're going to remember it. It wasn't a prediction. It was a promise. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, to apologize, to make myself even smaller than I already was. But my body had betrayed me, frozen in place, caught between terror and something else, something that made my pulse race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. I should go. The words tumbled out desperately. I'm sorry for disturbing. You didn't disturb anything. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made heat crawl up my spine despite the ice in my veins. In fact, I've been watching you all evening. The confession should have terrified me. It did terrify me, but it also sent a jolt of something electric through my body, settling low in my stomach like liquid fire. Watching me? I echoed stupidly. Through the kitchen door. He gestured slightly toward the small window in the door that separated the dining room from the kitchen. You move like you're trying to disappear. Like if you're quiet enough, small enough, the world will forget you're there. His observation cut too close to the bone, exposing truths I'd never spoken aloud. I was trying to disappear, every day, every shift, every moment I spent scrubbing floors and washing dishes. I was trying to make myself invisible enough that life would stop hurting so much. I don't... My protest died as he moved closer still. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that the expensive cologne became a drug in my lungs. You do. His hand came up and I flinched. I couldn't help it. But he didn't strike. Instead, his fingers caught a strand of hair that had escaped my messy bun, tucking it behind my ear with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man who radiated violence like others radiated warmth. The question is why? What are you running from, Sophia? Nothing. I'm not. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Everyone's running from something. His thumb brushed against my cheekbone, and I gasped at the contact, my skin burning where he touched. The smart ones just run faster. I should have pulled away, should have ducked under his arm and bolted for the door, but I was paralyzed, caught in the gravity of him, drowning in those amber eyes that saw too much, understood too much. I need to finish cleaning, I whispered, the last desperate attempt to break whatever spell he was weaving around us. No. The word was soft but absolute. You need to come upstairs with me. The world stopped. My heart stopped. Everything stopped. What? The question came out as barely more than a breath. I have a proposition for you. He stepped back slightly, giving me space that somehow felt like abandonment. Come upstairs to my office. Have a drink. Hear what I have to say. I can't. My mind scrambled for excuses, for reasons, for anything that would let me escape this moment. I have to get home. Where's home? The question was casual, but his eyes were anything but. That studio apartment in Queens? The one with the broken heater and the landlord who hasn't fixed the leak in 3 months? Ice flooded my veins. How do you... I make it my business to know things. He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like invading my privacy was just another Tuesday evening. I also know you're 2 months behind on rent, that you're working 3 jobs just to keep that shithole, that you send money back to your mother in Pennsylvania every month even though you can barely feed yourself. Each word was a hammer blow, shattering the illusion of anonymity I'd wrapped around myself like armor. He'd peeled away my layers, exposing the raw desperation underneath, and I had no defense against it. Why? The question came out broken, barely held together. Why would you know any of that? Because I wanted to. His smile was dangerous, beautiful in the way a predator was beautiful. And I always get what I want, Sophia. Always. The certainty in his voice should have repulsed me. Instead, it ignited something treacherous in my chest. A spark of want, of need, of the dangerous fantasy that someone like him could want someone like me. I'm nobody, I said, trying to make him understand. I'm just... You're someone who caught my attention. He held out his hand, palm up, an invitation and a command all at once, and that's the most dangerous thing you could be. I stared at his hand, Strong fingers, immaculate nails, a signet ring on his pinky that probably had more history than I had future. Taking it would change everything. I knew that with a bone-deep certainty that terrified me. Whatever waited upstairs, whatever proposition he had, it would mark a before and after in the story of my life. Behind him, the security guard shifted, a subtle reminder that I wasn't really being given a choice. Not really. Men like Dante Moretti didn't make requests. They made offers that sounded like requests, and the smart move was always to accept. But something in me hesitated, some last scrap of self-preservation that recognized the cliff edge I was standing on. What if I say no? I needed to know. Needed to understand exactly how much power I was surrendering. His smile widened, but it never reached his eyes. Then you walk out that door, go home to your broken apartment, and wake up tomorrow to the same life you've been living. Nothing changes. Nothing gets better. He paused, letting the words sink in like stones. But you'll always wonder what might have happened if you'd been brave enough to say yes. The manipulation was transparent, obvious even to me in my exhausted, terrified state. But that didn't make it less effective, because he was right. If I walked away now, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering, and wondering, I'd learned, was its own special kind of torture. My hand moved before my brain caught up, fingers trembling as they touched his palm. His hand closed around mine immediately, warm and strong and absolutely inescapable. The contact sent electricity shooting up my arm, settling in my chest like lightning in a bottle. "Good girl," he murmured, and the words shouldn't have affected me the way they did. Heat pooling in my stomach, breath catching in my throat. He tugged me gently away from the counter, and I followed, my legs moving on autopilot. The security guard fell into step behind us as Dante led me through the kitchen, past the dining room where hours ago I'd glimpsed him through that window, eating and drinking and commanding the attention of every man at the table with nothing more than his presence. We reached an elevator I'd never noticed before, hidden behind what I'd thought was a storage closet. Dante pressed his palm against a scanner, and the doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing an interior of polished wood and brass that looked like it belonged in a different century. As we stepped inside, his hand still holding mine, I caught our reflection in the brass-framed mirror. The contrast was devastating. Him, immaculate and powerful, every inch the king of whatever dark empire he ruled. Me, small and faded beside him, a shadow trying to stand in the sun. The doors closed with a definitive click, sealing us in together, and as the elevator began its ascent, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. Or maybe, I thought, as his thumb traced slow circles against my wrist, it was the first real choice I'd ever made. The elevator climbed higher, carrying me toward whatever waited in the darkness above, and all I could think was that I'd never been more terrified or more alive in my entire life. The elevator doors opened onto a world I'd only seen in movies. The penthouse spread before me like a fever dream rendered in marble and glass, floor-to-ceiling windows that transformed the New York skyline into a glittering backdrop, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, art on the walls that I suspected was original despite my complete inability to afford such knowledge. Everything gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that came from people like me scrubbing it daily, people who vanished into service hallways before anyone important could see them. Dante's hand remained wrapped around mine as he guided me inside, and I felt the security guard's presence fade as he took position outside the elevator, a silent sentinel between this world and everything else. "Sit." Dante released my hand, gesturing toward a leather sofa that probably cost more than my car, if I'd had a car. "I'll get us drinks." I perched on the edge of the cushion, afraid to lean back, afraid to touch anything more than absolutely necessary. My reflection stared back at me from the dark windows, a ghost in a cheap uniform haunting a palace. What was I doing here? What could a man like Dante Moretti possibly want from someone like me? He moved to a bar cart near the windows, his movements fluid and controlled, each gesture economical. Even the way he poured whiskey into crystal glasses spoke of breeding, of a life where every action was deliberate, considered. He'd removed his suit jacket, and I could see the play of muscles beneath his white shirt, the holster strapped beneath his left arm, barely visible, but unmistakably there. The gun should have terrified me. Instead, it confirmed what I'd already known. Dante Moretti was dangerous in ways I couldn't begin to comprehend. "You're wondering why you're here," he returned with 2 glasses, pressing one into my hands before settling into the chair across from me. Not beside me. The distance felt intentional, like he was giving me space to breathe while still keeping me within reach. "Yes." My fingers wrapped around the glass, desperate for something to hold on to. "Drink first." His eyes tracked my movements as I raised the glass to my lips. "Then we'll talk." The whiskey burned, going down, harsh and smoky, and nothing like the cheap beer I occasionally allowed myself. It spread warmth through my chest, loosening the knot of tension that had taken up permanent residence between my shoulder blades. "Better?" A hint of amusement colored his tone. "I don't understand what's happening," I admitted, setting the glass down on the coffee table before I could do something stupid like drain it in one gulp. "Why am I here? What do you want from me?" Dante studied me over the rim of his glass, those amber eyes dissecting me piece by piece. "Tell me, Sophia, what do you know about the Moretti family?" The name clicked into place with the force of a sledgehammer. Moretti. I'd heard it whispered in the restaurant, seen it in newspapers I couldn't afford to buy but caught glimpses of in subway stations. The Moretti family wasn't just wealthy, they were infamous. Old money wrapped around older power, the kind that came from controlling things the government pretended didn't exist. "I know you're not people I should be around," I whispered, fear crystallizing in my stomach. "Smart." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and suddenly the distance between us felt like nothing at all. "But you're here anyway. That makes you either very brave or very stupid." "I think we both know which one," I said, surprising myself with the bitter honesty. His laugh was low and genuine, transforming his face from beautiful to devastating. "I think you're braver than you realize. It takes courage to survive the way you have. 3 jobs, no family support except what you send away, barely keeping your head above water but refusing to drown." He paused, taking a slow sip. "I admire that. Admiration doesn't explain why I'm in your penthouse at midnight," I countered, finding some hidden reserve of spine I didn't know I possessed. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was exhaustion finally overriding self-preservation. "No, it doesn't." He set down his glass with careful precision. "You're here because I have a problem, Sophia. And I think you might be the solution." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires trust." His gaze intensified, pinning me in place. "My world is full of people who want something from me. Power, money, connections, protection. Everyone has an angle, an agenda. It makes genuine interaction complicated." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "And you think I don't want something from you? You just told me you know I'm drowning in debt. Of course you want something." He stood, moving to the windows, his silhouette outlined by the city lights. "But you're honest about your desperation. You don't hide it behind fake smiles and manufactured charm. You're raw, real. And that's exactly what I need." "I don't understand." The words felt inadequate, but they were all I had. He turned back to me, and the intensity in his expression made my breath catch. "I need someone to accompany me to certain events. Business dinners, charity galas, family gatherings. Someone who won't ask questions, who won't try to leverage the connection, who will simply be there." "Like an escort?" The word tasted wrong on my tongue. "Like a companion." His correction was sharp. "There's a difference. I'm not asking you to sleep with me, Sophia. I'm asking you to be seen with me." "Why me?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "There are hundreds of women who would see it as an opportunity to climb." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "Who would immediately start planning how to become the next Mrs. Moretti, how to sink their claws in deep enough that I couldn't extract them. You, on the other hand." He stopped directly in front of me, so close I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You look at me like I'm a bomb about to explode. Aren't you?" I whispered. That dangerous smile returned. "Probably, but at least you're aware of it." He reached down, his fingers brushing against my chin, tilting my face up further. Here's my offer. You come with me when I need you. You dress appropriately. I'll provide the wardrobe. You smile. You stay close. You don't ask about my business. In return, I'll clear your debts. All of them. Your rent, your mother's medical bills, everything. The world tilted. That's over $50,000. Pocket change. His thumb traced along my jawline, and I shivered despite the warmth flooding through me. What you're offering me is worth far more than money. I don't understand what I'm offering you, I admitted, my voice barely more than a breath. Safety. The word was simple, but the weight behind it was enormous. In my world, Sophia, genuine indifference is the rarest commodity. You don't want to use me. You don't want to hurt me. You just want to survive. That makes you the safest person I could possibly have by my side. His logic was twisted, but I couldn't find the flaw in it. Maybe because the whiskey was clouding my judgment. Maybe because the offer was so impossibly generous that my desperate, exhausted brain couldn't process rejection. How long? I asked instead. 6 months. His hand dropped away, leaving my skin cold. Give me 6 months. After that, if you want to walk away, you walk away. No strings, no obligations. The debts stay cleared. It was too good to be true. Every instinct screamed that. But those same instincts had kept me locked in poverty, scrubbing floors and swallowing pride, going nowhere slowly. What's the catch? There had to be one. The catch, he said slowly, returning to his chair, is that while you're with me, you're mine. Not sexually. I meant what I said about that, but in every other way that matters. Where I go, you go. What I say, you do. You don't question. You don't hesitate. And you absolutely don't betray me. The possessiveness in his tone should have sent me running. Instead, it ignited something dark and needy inside me. Something that had been starving for someone to claim me, to see me as worth keeping. And if I say no, I had to ask, even though we both knew my answer. Then I call Marco. That's the guard outside, and he'll escort you home. You'll go back to your life, and I'll find someone else. He leaned back, supremely confident. But you won't say no, Sophia, because you're smart enough to recognize a lifeline when it's thrown to you. He was right. I hated that he was right. But sitting there in that impossible penthouse, wearing my threadbare uniform, feeling the weight of every unpaid bill and every exhausted morning, I knew I couldn't refuse. This was my chance. Maybe my only chance. Okay. The word fell from my lips like a stone into still water, creating ripples that would reshape everything. Triumph flashed across his features, quickly masked. Say it properly. I want to hear you agree to the terms. I'll do it. My voice strengthened slightly. 6 months. I'll be your companion. I'll go where you go, do what you say. No questions, no betrayal. And you'll be mine. He prompted, his eyes gleaming. And I'll be yours. The words sent a thrill of fear and something else through me. He stood, moving to a desk near the windows, returning with a thick envelope. First month's payment. Consider it a signing bonus. Tomorrow someone will come to your apartment to take your measurements. By tomorrow night, you'll have a new wardrobe. Friday evening, I have a charity gala. That's where we start. I took the envelope with shaking hands, too afraid to open it. This is really happening. This is really happening, he confirmed, then checked his watch. Elegant, European, probably worth more than everything I owned combined. It's late. Marco will drive you home. The dismissal was clear, but I found myself hesitating. Why me? I asked again, needing to understand. Really, why me? Dante moved closer, his hand coming up to cup my cheek with unexpected tenderness, because when you look at me, you see a man. Not a name, not a reputation, not an opportunity, just a man. And I haven't been just a man in a very long time. Before I could respond, before I could process the vulnerability hidden in those words, he stepped back. Marco will be waiting. Go home, Sophia. Get some sleep. Your life changes tomorrow. I stood on unsteady legs, still clutching the envelope. As I moved toward the elevator, I felt his eyes tracking my every step, the weight of his attention like a physical touch. At the threshold, I turned back. He stood silhouetted against the windows, hands in his pockets, looking every inch the king of his dark domain. Beautiful and dangerous, and absolutely certain of his power. "Thank you," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was thanking him for. The money? The offer? The illusion that I mattered. "Don't thank me yet, Sophia." His smile was sharp in the darkness. "You might come to regret this." The elevator doors closed on his words, and as Marco drove me home through rain-slicked streets in a car that cost more than I'd make in 10 years, I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. $10,000 in cash stared back at me. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling the sob that threatened to escape. This was real. This was happening. And as the city lights blurred past the window, I couldn't decide if I'd just been saved or damned. Maybe, I thought as exhaustion finally crashed over me. It was both. The next morning arrived with cruel punctuality, sunlight stabbing through the gaps in my broken blinds like accusatory fingers. I'd barely slept. How could I? With $10,000 hidden beneath my mattress, and the memory of Dante Moretti's amber eyes burning through my thoughts like a brand. I'd counted the money 3 times before hiding it, my hands shaking so badly I kept losing track. Real. It was real. Not a dream. Not a hallucination born from exhaustion and desperation. I'd made a deal with a man who wore danger like cologne, and now I had to live with the consequences. My phone buzzed at exactly 9 a.m., an unknown number flashing across the cracked screen. "Miss Castellano? This is Marie Chen. Mr. Moretti has retained my services to assist with your wardrobe. I'll be at your address in 30 minutes. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Greasy hair, dark circles, wearing the same uniform from last night because I'd been too stunned to change. This was what Dante wanted to parade around on his arm? This exhausted ghost? I scrambled through the fastest shower of my life, the water lukewarm because of course the building's hot water was rationed. My nice clothes consisted of 2 pairs of jeans and 3 shirts that weren't actively falling apart. I chose the jeans without stains and a black sweater with only 1 small hole near the hem, then stared at my tiny apartment with mounting horror. Marie Chen was coming here. Someone from Dante's world was about to see how I really lived. The studio was barely 300 square feet of peeling paint and warped floors. My bed was a mattress on a metal frame, covered with blankets I'd had since college. The kitchenette consisted of a hot plate, a mini fridge that hummed ominously, and a sink that dripped no matter how tightly I turned the faucet. The leak Dante had mentioned, the one he somehow knew about, had created a permanent water stain on the ceiling, brown and spreading like a disease. I shoved dirty clothes into the closet, threw dishes into the sink, and was attempting to make the bed look less pathetic when the knock came. Marie Chen was not what I expected. Petite, impeccably dressed in a tailored pantsuit, she swept into my apartment with the efficiency of a general surveying a battlefield. Her eyes catalogued everything in seconds. The poverty, the desperation, the sheer impossibility of my situation. "Well," she said, her tone neutral in a way that felt more damning than criticism, "we have our work cut out for us." Behind her, 2 assistants carried in garment bags, shoeboxes, and cases I couldn't begin to identify. They transformed my pathetic studio into a makeshift boutique with practiced ease, hanging clothes on a portable rack, arranging accessories on my rickety table. "Strip," Marie commanded, pulling out a measuring tape. "Everything off except undergarments." I hesitated, suddenly aware of how worn my bra was, how the elastic in my underwear had long since given up. But Marie's expression brooked no argument, so I peeled off my clothes with burning cheeks, standing in the middle of my apartment in my shame while she measured every inch of me with clinical precision. "Size 2, she muttered, making notes on a tablet. "Probably were a 4 before the weight loss. We'll need to account for that. Mr. Moretti wants you fed properly." She glanced up sharply. "When's the last time you ate a full meal?" "Yesterday?" The lie was transparent. Try again. 3 days ago. The admission tasted like failure. "I had ramen." Marie's expression softened fractionally. "One of you, go to the deli on the corner, get soup, sandwich, fruit, actually edible food. She turned back to me. You'll eat while we work. Mr. Moretti was very specific. He wants you healthy. The casual possessiveness in her words, he wants you healthy, sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with standing half naked in my cold apartment. For the next 3 hours, Marie orchestrated a transformation that felt more like an invasion. She brought dresses and fabrics I'd never touched, silk, cashmere, Italian wool, shoes that cost more than my monthly rent, jewelry that made my hands shake when she fastened it around my throat, makeup, skincare products, hair treatments, an arsenal of femininity that I'd never had access to, never even dreamed of affording. The gala is tomorrow night, Marie explained as she demonstrated proper skincare technique, her fingers surprisingly gentle as they smoothed cream across my face. Mr. Moretti will collect you at 7. You'll wear the midnight blue dress. It brings out your eyes. Hair down, minimal jewelry. He wants you to look elegant but not ostentatious. Does he always dictate what women wear? The question escaped before I could stop it. Marie's smile was knowing. Mr. Moretti dictates everything, Miss Castellano. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be. She stepped back, examining me with a critical eye, but for what it's worth, his taste is impeccable. Trust him. Trust him. The man who'd invaded my privacy, learned my secrets, and bought my compliance with money I desperately needed. Trust him. What else should I know? I asked instead, watching as her assistants packed away the clothes I wouldn't be wearing tomorrow, leaving only the essentials. Don't speak unless spoken to at first. Just observe. Don't drink too much. Mr. Moretti needs you clear-headed. Don't wander away from him. There will be people there who would love to use you against him. She paused, her expression turning serious. And whatever you see, whatever you hear, forget it the moment you leave. His world has rules, Miss Castellano. Break them, and the consequences are severe. Fear crawled up my spine. What kind of consequences? The kind we don't discuss. Marie handed me her card. My number. Call if you need anything before tomorrow. Mr. Moretti wants you comfortable. After they left, my apartment looked both better and worse. The new clothes hanging in my closet mocked everything else I owned. The skincare products lined up on my bathroom sink seemed to highlight the water damage and mold. I was Cinderella with one foot in the ball and one still trapped in the ashes. I forced myself to eat the sandwich they'd brought, though it sat like stones in my shrunken stomach. Then I pulled out my laptop, ancient, held together with tape and prayer, and did what I should have done last night. I researched Dante Moretti. The results made my blood run cold. Articles about the Moretti family's alleged connections to organized crime, photographs of Dante at exclusive events, always surrounded by men who looked like they killed people for a living, a Wikipedia page that listed his business ventures, nightclubs, restaurants, real estate, but everyone knew those were fronts. The comments sections whispered about protection rackets, money laundering, worse things that people were too afraid to name, and the women. God, the women. Photographs of Dante with a rotating cast of beautiful, polished women on his arm, models, actresses, socialites, none lasting more than a few months before disappearing from his side. What happened to them? Where did they go? The internet offered no answers, just speculation and rumor. One article from 6 months ago caught my attention. Moretti Empire in turmoil after betrayal. The details were vague, protected by legal threats, but it mentioned a trusted associate who'd stolen from the family. The associate had vanished shortly after the article published. No body found. No arrests made. Just gone. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. What had I agreed to? What had I walked into? My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Sophia. Dante's voice poured through the speaker like dark honey, and despite everything I'd just read, my body responded. Pulse quickening, breath catching. Marie tells me the fitting went well. She's very thorough, I managed, hating how breathless I sounded. She's the best. A pause. How are you feeling about tomorrow? Terrified. Excited. Completely out of my depth. Fine. His low chuckle suggested he knew I was lying. You researched me. It wasn't a question. My blood froze. How did you... I know everything you do, Sophia. I told you that. No anger in his tone. just certainty. What did you find? Enough to know I should be afraid of you. Honesty seemed safer than lies. Good. The word wrapped around me like chains. Fear will keep you careful. Careful will keep you safe. And I need you safe, Piccola. Do you understand? The Italian endearment, little one, shouldn't have affected me, but it did. Why do you need me safe? Because you're mine now. Absolute, simple, terrifying. What's mine, I protect. What threatens what's mine, I destroy. Those are the rules. I should have argued, should have pushed back against the possessiveness that dripped from every word. But sitting in my pathetic apartment, surrounded by evidence of his wealth and power, I felt the truth settle into my bones. I wasn't a companion. I was a possession. And Dante Moretti protected his possessions with the same ruthlessness he used to eliminate his enemies. I'll be ready tomorrow, I whispered, because what else could I say? 7 o'clock. Wear what Marie selected. And Sophia? His voice dropped lower, intimate. Sleep well tonight. Tomorrow, you enter my world. There's no going back after that. He hung up before I could respond, leaving me clutching the phone like a lifeline in shark-infested waters. That night, I dreamed of amber eyes and silk ties, of hands that could caress or kill with equal ease. I dreamed of drowning in luxury while chains made of gold wrapped around my wrists, and when I woke, gasping, in the cold darkness of my apartment, I couldn't tell if the dreams were warnings or promises. Friday evening arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. I spent the day in a haze of anxiety, calling in sick to my shifts. The first time I'd ever done that. The money hidden under my mattress whispered that I could afford it now. But guilt gnawed at me anyway. My coworkers depended on me. My boss would be furious, but Dante had made it clear. When he called, I answered. Everything else was secondary. I started getting ready at 5, following Marie's instructions with trembling hands. The shower, the lotions, the careful application of makeup that made me look like a stranger. Polished, elegant, almost beautiful. The midnight blue dress slid over my skin like water, hugging curves I'd forgotten I had. The neckline dipping low enough to be sophisticated without being indecent. The heels added 3 inches to my height, but felt like stilts. I practiced walking in my tiny apartment, wobbling like a newborn deer, until I could manage a few steps without breaking my ankle. By 6:45, I was ready. By 6:55, I was pacing. By 7 exactly, the knock came. But it wasn't Dante at my door. It was Marco, the security guard from the elevator, his expression neutral as he took in my transformation. Mr. Moretti is waiting downstairs, Miss Castellano. Of course he was. Men like Dante didn't climb stairs to collect their possessions. They waited, and the world came to them. Marco escorted me down the narrow stairwell, no elevator in my building, and out onto the street where a black car idled at the curb. Not just any car. A Bentley, sleek and dangerous. Windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Marco opened the back door, and suddenly I was face to face with Dante Moretti. If he'd been devastating in a suit before, he was absolutely lethal in a tuxedo. Black on black, tailored to perfection, a bow tie that somehow made him look both civilized and savage. His hair was swept back, revealing the sharp planes of his face, and those amber eyes tracked every inch of me with an intensity that made my skin burn. Bellissima, he murmured, the Italian rolling off his tongue like a caress. Get in, Sophia. It's time. I slid into the car beside him, hyper-aware of every point where our bodies almost touched, and as Marco closed the door, sealing us in leather-scented luxury, I felt the last threads of my old life fall away. Dante's hand found mine in the darkness, his fingers threading through mine with possessive certainty. Ready? He asked, though we both knew it didn't matter if I was or not. The car pulled away from the curb, carrying me toward a world of glittering danger, and all I could do was hold on to Dante's hand and pray I'd survive what came next. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, because of course it was. Dante's world didn't do things halfway. If there was going to be a party, it would be in a temple to beauty and wealth, surrounded by art worth more than small countries. The car glided to a stop at the base of the museum's iconic steps, where a red carpet stretched upward like a river of blood. Cameras flashed in the darkness, photographers jostling for position behind velvet ropes, their lenses hungry for the next shot, the next scandal. the next story to sell. My hand tightened involuntarily around Dante's, panic clawing at my throat. "Breathe, Piccola." His voice was low, meant only for me. "Stay close to me. Smile if you want, but you don't have to. Just don't look afraid." "I am afraid," I whispered. "I know." His thumb traced circles against my palm, a gesture that should have been comforting, but felt more like a claim being staked. "But they don't need to know that." Marco opened the door, and suddenly the muffled chaos outside became a roar. Dante stepped out first, his movements fluid and controlled, every inch the predator in his natural habitat. Then he turned, extending his hand to me, and I had no choice but to take it. The moment my heels touched the red carpet, the cameras exploded. Flashes turned the night into a strobe light, blinding and disorienting, and I stumbled slightly. Dante's arm wrapped around my waist immediately, pulling me against his side with a possessiveness that probably looked romantic to the photographers, but felt like iron bands to me. "Who's your date, Mr. Moretti?" someone shouted from behind the ropes. "Is this official?" another voice called out. "Miss, what's your name?" Dante ignored them all, guiding me up the steps with the confidence of a man who owned every space he entered. His hand on my waist burned through the thin fabric of my dress, and I was acutely aware of how perfectly I fit against his side, how his body shielded me from the worst of the attention. Inside, the museum had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors. Wait staff in crisp white uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. And the people, God, the people. Diamonds dripped from throats and wrists. Designer gowns swept across the floor. These were the kind of people who appeared in Forbes and Vogue, who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. And I was supposed to pretend I belonged here. Dante! A silver-haired man in an immaculate tuxedo approached, his smile wide but his eyes calculating. "I didn't know you were bringing a guest." "Last-minute decision, Senator." Dante's hand moved from my waist to the small of my back, a subtle but unmistakable claim. "Sophia, this is Senator Blackwell." "Senator, Sophia Castellano." The senator's eyes raked over me, assessing, categorizing. I saw the moment he dismissed me as irrelevant. Just another pretty face on Dante's arm, here today and gone tomorrow. "Charming," he said, already turning his attention back to Dante. "We should talk about that development project in Brooklyn. I have some concerns about the zoning." "Not tonight." Dante's voice carried an edge that made the senator's smile falter. "Tonight is for charity, remember?" It was a dismissal wrapped in civility, but the senator recognized it for what it was. He backed away with a tight nod, and I felt Dante's hand press more firmly against my back. "That's how you handle them," he murmured against my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "Polite but firm. Never give them more than they deserve." "I didn't say anything," I pointed out, hyper-aware of his proximity, the way his cologne wrapped around me like smoke. "Exactly." His lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're learning already." The evening became a blur of faces and names I'd never remember. Dante guided me through the crowd with expert precision, his hand never leaving my body. Sometimes at my waist, sometimes on my back, occasionally sliding down to my hip in a gesture that made my breath catch and my skin flush. He introduced me to businessmen and socialites, politicians and celebrities, each interaction carefully orchestrated, and I began to understand what he'd meant about needing someone who wouldn't use him. These people circled like sharks, each one looking for an opening, an angle, a way to leverage proximity to Dante Moretti into something valuable. They smiled with their mouths, but calculated with their eyes, and the few women who approached us looked at me with a mixture of envy and contempt. "You're doing well," Dante said during a rare moment of privacy, tucking me into an alcove away from the main crowd. He handed me a glass of champagne, my second of the evening, because he'd been monitoring my intake like a hawk. "Better than I expected." "I'm not doing anything," I said honestly. "I'm just standing here trying not to fall in these heels." His laugh was genuine, transforming his face into something almost human. "You're giving me exactly what I need." a moment of peace in a room full of vultures. His hand came up to cup my cheek, the gesture tender in a way that confused me. "Thank you." Before I could respond, a woman's voice cut through the moment like a knife. Well, Dante Moretti with another stray. How predictable. I turned to find a woman who looked like she'd stepped off a runway, tall, blonde, devastatingly beautiful, in a red dress that probably cost more than my yearly rent, but it was her eyes that caught me, cold and sharp as broken glass. Fixed on me with undisguised hatred, Dante's entire demeanor changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by something arctic and dangerous. His hand dropped from my face but immediately found my waist, pulling me against him with bruising force. "Vanessa." His voice could have frozen fire. "I didn't realize you'd be here," Father insisted. She moved closer, her gaze never leaving me. "He said you were bringing someone new. I had to see for myself." She looked me up and down slowly, deliberately. "She's not your usual type. Too plain." The insult landed like a slap, and I felt heat flood my cheeks. Because she was right. I was plain compared to her, compared to all the women I'd seen in those photographs online. What was I doing here? "Careful, Vanessa." Dante's warning was soft, but deadly. "You're speaking about something that belongs to me." The possessiveness should have bothered me. Instead, it sent a thrill through my body that I didn't want to examine too closely. Vanessa's perfectly painted lips curved into a cruel smile. "Belongs to you? How long until you get bored and discard this one too? A month? 2? She leaned closer, her perfume cloying and expensive. "Tell me, darling, has he told you what happened to the last girl who thought she was special?" "That's enough." Dante's voice cracked like a whip, and suddenly Marco was there, materializing out of nowhere. "Escort Miss Vanessa back to her father. Now, you can't just—" Vanessa started, but one look at Dante's face silenced her. I'd never seen someone's expression turn so cold, so utterly devoid of mercy. This was the man who made people disappear. This was the monster beneath the beautiful mask. Marco took Vanessa's arm, gently, but inexorably, and guided her away. She threw one last venomous look over her shoulder before vanishing into the crowd. The moment she was gone, Dante's hand moved to my chin, tilting my face up to meet his eyes. The coldness was still there, banked but not extinguished. "Are you all right?" he asked, and I heard genuine concern beneath the anger. "Who was she?" My voice shook slightly. "And what happened to the last girl?" "Vanessa is the daughter of a business associate. She thinks we have an understanding." His thumb brushed across my lower lip and I shivered. "We don't. As for the last girl," he paused, something dark flickering across his features. "She betrayed me. She thought she could steal from me and disappear. She was wrong." "What did you do to her?" I had to know, even though part of me didn't want the answer. "What I do to everyone who betrays me." His eyes bored into mine, making sure I understood. I made sure she could never do it again. The implication hung between us, heavy and terrible. And yet, standing there with his hand on my face, his body pressed against mine, I couldn't make myself pull away. Because beneath the fear, beneath the rational voice screaming at me to run, there was something else, something that responded to his darkness, with a hunger I didn't understand. "Are you afraid of me now?" he asked softly. "Yes," I whispered. "Good." He leaned closer, his lips brushing against my ear. "Fear will keep you honest, and honesty will keep you safe. Remember that, Sophia." Before I could process his words, he straightened, his public mask sliding back into place. "Come. There's someone I want you to meet." He guided me through the crowd again, but everything had changed. I was acutely aware of the danger radiating from him, of the way people instinctively moved out of his path, and I was aware of my own traitorous body, responding to his touch, despite knowing what he was capable of. We approached an older man holding court near a massive marble sculpture. 60s, distinguished, with silver hair, and eyes that missed nothing. The group around him parted immediately when they saw Dante approaching. "Uncle Salvatore." Dante's voice warmed slightly, the first genuine warmth I'd heard all evening. "I'd like you to meet Sofia Castellano." The old man's eyes sharpened with interest, studying me with an intensity that rivaled Dante's. "Castellano? Italian?" My grandfather was from Sicily, I managed, my voice steadier than I expected. Ah. Something shifted in Salvatore's expression. Good bloodline. And what do you do, Miss Castellano? The question was a test. I could feel Dante tense beside me, waiting to see how I'd answer. I could lie, inflate my importance, or I could tell the truth and risk embarrassing him. I work in restaurants, I said simply. Whatever needs doing. Salvatore's eyebrows rose, and I braced for judgment. Instead, he laughed, a deep, genuine sound. Honest. When's the last time you brought someone honest to these things, Dante? Too long, Dante admitted, and I felt his hand squeeze my waist approvingly. Keep this one, Salvatore advised, his eyes twinkling. The honest ones are rare. As we moved away, Dante pulled me closer. You surprised me, he murmured. Most would have tried to seem more impressive. I'm not impressive, I said. Lying about it won't change that. You're wrong. His voice dropped to that intimate register that made my stomach flutter. You're the most impressive person here. You're surviving a world that wants to break you, and you're still standing. That's worth more than all their money and connections combined. His words shouldn't have affected me so deeply, but they burrowed into my chest and took root. When's the last time someone had seen my struggle as strength instead of failure? The rest of the evening passed in a haze. Dante kept me close, his body a constant presence against mine, his hand never straying far, and slowly, I began to understand the nature of his possession. It wasn't about control, or not just about control, it was about protection. In his world, being claimed by Dante Moretti meant being untouchable. The way people's eyes skated over me after his declaration to Vanessa, the careful distance they maintained, it was because I wore his mark. I was his. And in his world, that meant something. Near midnight, as the gala began winding down, Dante guided me toward a private balcony overlooking the museum's sculpture garden. The cool night air was a relief after the stifling heat of the party, and I breathed deeply, trying to clear my head. You did well tonight. Dante stood close behind me, his hands coming to rest on the balcony railing on either side of me, caging me in, better than well. You were perfect. I barely spoke, I pointed out, hyper-aware of his body heat at my back. Exactly. His breath stirred my hair. You didn't try to perform or impress. You just existed beside me. Do you know how rare that is? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. In my world, everyone's an actor. Everyone's playing a role, angling for advantage. But you... His hands moved to my hips, and I gasped as he pulled me back against him. You're real. Raw. Mine. Dante. His name came out breathless. Say it again. A command, not a request. Dante, softer this time. His hands tightened on my hips. You feel this between us, don't you? This pull. I wanted to deny it. Wanted to maintain some shred of dignity, of self-preservation. But his body was pressed against mine, his scent surrounding me, and I couldn't lie. Not about this. Yes. The admission cost me, but it was the truth. Good. One hand left my hip, sliding up my side, across my ribs, stopping just below my breast, because I'm going to keep you, Sophia. Not for 6 months. Not for any defined period. I'm going to keep you until I decide I'm done. And that might be never. Terror and desire warred within me. That wasn't our agreement. Agreements change. His lips brushed against my neck and I shuddered. I changed my mind the moment I saw you in that kitchen, scrubbing counters like your life depended on it. You were so determined, so focused, completely unaware that I was watching, and I knew. You were going to be mine. You can't just decide that, I protested weakly. I just did. He turned me in his arms, and suddenly we were face to face, his eyes burning into mine. Tell me you don't want this. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me, and I'll let you walk away right now. I opened my mouth to do exactly that, to save myself from whatever dark road he was leading me down, but the words wouldn't come, because he was right. I did feel it. This impossible, terrifying pull toward a man who was dangerous in every way that mattered. My silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. His hand cupped my face with devastating gentleness, "You're mine now, Sophia, and I protect what's mine." Then he kissed me. The kiss shattered every defense I'd carefully constructed, every rational argument about why this was wrong, dangerous, impossible. His lips moved against mine with a certainty that suggested he'd been thinking about this moment as obsessively as I had, and when his tongue swept into my mouth, I made a sound that was half surrender, half plea. His hand tangled in my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss, while his other arm banded around my waist, pulling me flush against him. I could feel every hard plane of his body, the controlled strength in his arms, the racing of his heart that matched my own. He kissed me like he was claiming territory, marking me in ways that had nothing to do with words and everything to do with possession. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard, my lips swollen, and his eyes blazing with hunger barely restrained. "We need to leave," he said roughly. "Now, before I do something extremely inappropriate on this balcony." He didn't wait for my response, just took my hand and pulled me back through the gala. We moved quickly past the remaining guests, past the cameras at the entrance, down to where Marco waited with the car. The moment the door closed behind us, sealing us in leather and darkness, Dante pulled me onto his lap. 6 weeks, he muttered against my mouth between kisses that left me gasping. I told myself I'd wait 6 weeks before touching you, give you time to adjust, to understand what being mine meant. His teeth grazed my neck, and I arched into him helplessly. Made it 6 hours. Dante... I tried to form coherent thoughts, but his mouth was doing things to my throat that short-circuited my brain. This wasn't supposed to. We agreed. I know what we agreed. He pulled back enough to look at me, his eyes molten in the darkness. "And I'm changing the terms. I want you, Sophia, not just as arm candy at parties. I want you in my bed, in my life, in every way that matters. I'm not..." I struggled for words. "I'm not equipped for this. Your world, your life, the danger. I'll keep you safe." His hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "That's what you don't understand yet. Nothing will touch you while you're mine. No one will hurt you, threaten you, or take you from me. I'll burn down the entire city first." The vow should have terrified me. Instead, something inside me, some broken, desperate part that had been alone for too long, believed him. "What if I say no?" I had to ask, even though we both knew I wouldn't. "Then I'll court you properly." His thumb traced my lower lip. "Flowers, dinners, the whole traditional routine. I'll wait until you say yes." He paused, his expression turning predatory. "But you won't say no, Sophia, because you want this as much as I do." He was right, and we both knew it. So instead of arguing, I kissed him again, pouring every confused emotion into the contact. Fear and desire and desperate need all tangled together until I couldn't separate them anymore. The drive to his penthouse passed in a blur of heated kisses and whispered promises. By the time we stumbled through his door, my dress was half unzipped and his bow tie hung loose around his neck. He pressed me against the wall of his entryway, his body pinning mine, his mouth trailing fire down my throat. "Tell me to stop." His voice was ragged. "If you want to stop, tell me now." But I didn't want to stop. For the first time in years, I wanted something for myself, not survival, not responsibility, just this wild, reckless thing burning between us. "Don't stop," I whispered. That night, Dante Moretti claimed me in every way possible. He was gentle when I needed gentleness, fierce when I needed strength, and utterly consuming in a way that left no room for doubt about who I belonged to now. And when I finally fell asleep in his arms, his body wrapped around mine like a shield, I felt safer than I had in years. Even if that safety came from the most dangerous man I'd ever met. The next morning, I woke in sheets that probably cost more than my car would have if I'd owned a car. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a moment, I forgot where I was. Then memory crashed back, the gala, the kiss, everything that followed, and I sat up abruptly, looking for Dante. He stood by the windows, already dressed in tailored slacks and a crisp white shirt, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw me awake, his expression softened in a way I was learning meant affection in his carefully controlled world. "Handle it," he said into the phone, then hung up. "Good morning, Bellissima." "Hi." I pulled the sheet up. suddenly self-conscious in the morning light. He crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge, his hand finding my face with the familiarity of someone who'd earned the right to touch. Regrets? I don't know yet, I admitted honestly. Should I have them? Probably. His smile was wry. But it's too late now. You're in this with me. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. I need to handle something. Stay here. Don't leave the penthouse. What's wrong? Business. He kissed my forehead, already moving toward the door. Marco will be outside if you need anything. I'll be back soon. He left before I could ask more questions, and I was alone in his enormous penthouse, wearing nothing but expensive sheets and poor life choices. I spent the morning exploring carefully, afraid to touch anything that looked too expensive. The place was immaculate, professionally cleaned, obviously, with none of the comfortable clutter that made a space feel lived in. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress disguised as luxury. In the bathroom, I found new toiletries still in their packaging. My preferred brands, I realized with a start. How had he known? But of course he had. Dante made it his business to know everything. I showered and dressed in one of the outfits Marie had left at my apartment. Jeans and a cashmere sweater that felt like wearing a cloud. I was attempting to make coffee in his intimidatingly high-tech kitchen when I heard raised voices from the hallway. Told you to wait downstairs, Marco's voice sharp with tension. I need to see him. Now, a woman's voice, familiar from last night. Vanessa. My stomach dropped. I moved toward the door, unsure if I should hide or confront, when it burst open. Vanessa swept in, looking immaculate despite the early hour, her eyes scanning the space until they landed on me. Well? Her smile was poison. He works fast, doesn't he? Miss Vanessa, you need to leave. Marco stood in the doorway, his hand near his weapon. It's fine, Marco. I found my voice, channeling the dignity Dante had seen in me even when I couldn't see it myself. What do you want, Vanessa? She moved closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor. To warn you, that's all. Woman to woman. Warn me about what? About what happens to girls like you in Dante's world. She circled me slowly, predatory. You think you're special. You think he actually cares about you? You're a novelty, sweetheart. A project. He gets bored with projects. And you're bitter because you wanted to be one. I shot back, surprising myself with the venom. Her eyes flashed. I'm trying to save you. The last girl who got too close, who thought she meant something. She's gone now. Vanished. And before her, there was another. They all think they're different. They all think they can change him. She leaned in close. They're all wrong. Get out. Dante's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He stood in the doorway, and the fury radiating from him made the air feel electric. Now! Vanessa paled but held her ground. I don't care. He moved into the room with lethal grace, positioning himself between us. You came into my home uninvited. You threatened what's mine. Leave now, or I'll have Marco remove you less gently. Your father will hear about this, Vanessa hissed. Tell him. Dante's smile was terrifying. Tell him I've found someone worth protecting. See if he cares. Vanessa's composure cracked. With a final venomous look at me, she swept out, Marco following to ensure she actually left. The moment the door closed, Dante turned to me. Are you all right? Did she hurt you? No, just words. I wrapped my arms around myself. Is it true? About the other girls? His jaw tightened. There have been women before you. None of them lasted because none of them were real. They wanted the money, the power, the status. When they tried to leverage it, when they betrayed me. He moved closer. I dealt with them accordingly. What does that mean? I needed to hear him say it. It means I made sure they couldn't hurt me or my family again. I didn't kill them, if that's what you're asking. But I made sure they understood the consequences of crossing me. And what makes you think I won't betray you? The question hung between us. Because you're terrified of me, but you're still here. He cupped my face gently. Because you could have run 12 times and you didn't. Because when I look at you, I don't see calculation. I see fear and desire and honesty. His forehead pressed against mine. I see someone worth keeping. I'm still scared, I whispered. Good. That means you're smart. He kissed me softly. But I need you to trust me, Sophia. Can you do that? Trust the monster. Trust the man who admitted to destroying people who crossed him. Trust someone who'd invaded my privacy and bought my compliance. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something beneath the predator. Vulnerability, loneliness, the desperate need to find something real in a world built on lies. And I realized we weren't so different, him and me. Both of us trying to survive in worlds that wanted to break us. Both of us desperate for something genuine. I'll try, I said finally. His smile was worth the risk. The weeks that followed were a strange blend of luxury and danger, of tender moments and harsh realities. I moved into Dante's penthouse officially. My sad little apartment packed up by people I never saw. My debts vanished overnight. My mother's medical bills, covered, everything I'd been drowning in, gone. In return, I became part of Dante's life completely. I attended business dinners where men discussed things I pretended not to hear. I learned to stand silently at his side, reading the room for threats while he conducted business. I became fluent in the language of his world, the careful distances, the coded words, the understanding that some questions were never asked. But at night, in the darkness of his bedroom, he was just Dante, just a man who held me like I was precious, who whispered plans for a future I was afraid to believe in, who made me feel seen in ways no one ever had. I have something to tell you, he said one evening. 3 months into our arrangement, we sat on his balcony, the city glittering below us, his arm around my shoulders. About my father. I tensed. He rarely spoke about his family beyond Salvatore. He wants to meet you. Officially. Dante's voice was careful. It means he's accepting you as part of this family. Is that good? I asked. It's everything. He turned to look at me, his eyes serious. It means you're not temporary anymore, Sophia. It means you're permanent. Mine. Family. The word settled over me like a blanket, comforting and suffocating all at once. Family meant protection, but it also meant obligation. It meant being woven into the fabric of his world so tightly that extraction would tear me apart. Okay, I said simply, because what else could I say? I was already in too deep to swim back to shore. The meeting with his father was scheduled for the following week, but it never happened, because 4 days later, I woke up nauseous, my body rejecting breakfast with violent insistence. At first, I thought it was food poisoning. Then, I thought it was stress, but when it continued for 3 days straight, accompanied by exhaustion and heightened emotions, I knew with a certainty that made my blood run cold. I was pregnant. The pregnancy test I bought at a pharmacy 3 blocks from Dante's building, too afraid to buy it anywhere closer, confirmed what my body already knew. 2 pink lines that changed everything. I stared at the test in the pharmacy bathroom, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. What was I going to do? How could I tell Dante? We'd been careful, mostly careful, but apparently not careful enough. And now, I was carrying the child of a man who destroyed people for betraying him, who'd built his life on violence and control. What kind of father would he be? What kind of life could I give a child in his world? I wrapped the test in toilet paper and shoved it deep in my purse, my mind racing. I needed time to think, to figure out how to tell him, to understand what this meant for us. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. That evening, Dante came home earlier than usual, his expression thunderous. We have a problem. What kind of problem? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, hyper-aware of the pregnancy test hidden in my purse across the room. Someone's been asking questions about you, about your background, your family, why you're with me. His eyes burned with barely contained fury. Someone's trying to use you against me. My blood ran cold. Who? I don't know yet, but I will. He pulled me against him, his arms like steel bands. I'm sending you away, somewhere safe, just until I handle this. No. The word burst out before I could stop it. I'm not leaving you. It's not a request, Sophia. His voice turned hard. You're in danger, real danger, and I won't risk you. We argued for hours, his insistence meeting my stubborn refusal. I couldn't leave now. Not when I needed to tell him about the baby. Not when everything was about to change. Finally, exhausted, we went to bed. The argument unresolved. Dante held me tightly, as if he could protect me through sheer force of will, and I lay awake, one hand pressed against my still flat stomach, wondering how to tell him that he wasn't just protecting me anymore. The next morning I woke alone. Dante had left early, a note on his pillow saying he'd be back by evening. I spent the day in a haze of anxiety, the pregnancy test burning a hole in my consciousness. I needed to tell him. Today. When he got home, I'd tell him everything. But when evening came, it wasn't Dante who walked through the door. It was Marco, his face grave. "Miss Sophia, you need to come with me. Now. What's wrong? Where's Dante?" "There's been an incident. He's fine," Marco added quickly, seeing my panic. "But he needs you somewhere secure. Please. We need to go." I grabbed my purse, the purse with the test still hidden inside, and followed Marco to the car. We drove through the city in tense silence, taking turns I didn't recognize, heading toward a part of town I'd never been. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "Safe house." Mr. Moretti's orders. Marco's eyes never stopped scanning the streets. "Someone made a move tonight. He wants you protected until it's handled." The safe house turned out to be a nondescript building in Queens, the kind of place no one would look twice at. Marco escorted me to a third-floor apartment, sparsely furnished but clean, with bars on the windows and multiple locks on the door. "Stay here. Don't leave for any reason. Don't answer the door unless you hear the code word." He handed me a phone, a burner, by the looks of it. "Mr. Moretti will call when it's safe." "Marco. He'll explain everything." Marco's expression softened slightly. "He's trying to protect you, Miss Sophia. Let him." Then he was gone, and I was alone in a strange apartment, pregnant with the child of a mafia boss who'd just sent me into hiding. I spent that night clutching the burner phone, jumping at every sound, but the call never came. Hours stretched into dawn, and still nothing. I tried to stay calm, tried to trust that Dante knew what he was doing, but as morning light crept through the barred windows, panic began to set in. Where was he? What had happened? Was he safe? The phone finally rang at noon, and I nearly dropped it in my haste to answer. "Dante? Sophia." His voice was rough, exhausted. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." "What happened? Where are you?" "I can't explain now, but it's handled. I'm coming to get you." He paused. "I'm sorry you had to spend the night there. I wanted you close, but it wasn't safe." "I don't care about that." Relief flooded through me. "I just need you here. 2 hours. I promise." His voice softened. "I love you, Sophia. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Dante. 2 hours," he repeated. Then the line went dead. I sat in stunned silence, his confession echoing in my ears. He loved me. This dangerous, beautiful, terrifying man loved me, and I was carrying his child. I pulled the pregnancy test from my purse, staring at those 2 pink lines. In 2 hours, I'd tell him. In 2 hours, everything would change again. But first, I needed to use the bathroom. The nausea was back with a vengeance. I'd just flushed, was washing my hands, when I heard it. The sound of the locks clicking open, too early. Dante had said 2 hours, and it had only been 10 minutes. "Marco?" I called out, drying my hands, my heart beginning to race. "Is that you?" No response. Just footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving through the apartment. Fear froze me in place. I looked around the bathroom frantically, searching for a weapon, for an escape, but there was nothing. Just a window too small to climb through and a door that opened into danger. The footsteps stopped outside the bathroom. Then a voice, low and unfamiliar. "We know you're in there, Miss Castellano. Come out. We just want to talk." Every instinct screamed at me to stay hidden, to wait for Dante. But the test was still on the bathroom counter, visible evidence of my secret. I couldn't let them find it, couldn't let them have that weapon to use against Dante. I grabbed the test, shoving it in my pocket, and opened the door. 3 men stood in the apartment, all armed, all watching me with predatory interest. The leader smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen. "There you are, Mr. Moretti's little pet," he gestured to the others. "Bring her. The boss wants to meet the girl who made Dante Moretti go soft." I tried to run, tried to fight, but it was useless. They grabbed me easily, zip-tying my wrists, and I realized with dawning horror that they'd been waiting for Dante to leave me alone. This wasn't random. This was planned. As they dragged me toward the door, all I could think was, I never told him. I never told him about the baby. And now, I might never get the chance. They took me to a warehouse on the waterfront, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear into the river without anyone noticing. They threw me into a chair, the metal cold against my back, and zip-tied my ankles to the legs. The leader, tall, scarred, with eyes like a dead fish, circled me slowly. "Do you know why you're here, Miss Castellano?" "No." My voice shook, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Because Dante Moretti took something from us. So we're taking something from him." He crouched in front of me, his smile widening. "You." Terror clawed at my throat, but beneath it something else stirred. Rage. These men thought I was just a possession to be traded, a weakness to exploit. They had no idea what Dante would do to them for this. "He'll kill you," I said flatly. "All of you. When he finds out, we'll already be gone. And you..." He reached out, his finger trailing down my cheek in a mockery of Dante's tenderness. "You'll be our message, our proof that the mighty Moretti isn't untouchable." The door burst open with explosive force, and Dante strode in like an avenging angel dressed in a blood-spattered suit. Behind him, Marco and half a dozen armed men fanned out, weapons drawn. The transformation in Dante was terrifying. This wasn't the man who held me gently at night, or whispered sweet words against my skin. This was the monster, unleashed and hunting. Sophia. My name was a command, his eyes finding me immediately, cataloging every injury, every terror. Then his gaze shifted to the leader, and his expression turned arctic. "You touched what's mine." "Moretti?" The leader tried for bravado, but I heard the fear underneath. "This doesn't have to..." "You put your hands on her." Dante moved forward with lethal grace. "You zip-tied her wrists. You dragged her from a safe house I personally secured." Each word was punctuated by another step. "You made her afraid. It was just business." Dante's gun came up, the movement so fast I almost missed it. The shot echoed through the warehouse, and the leader crumpled, screaming, his kneecap shattered. That was for touching her. Dante's voice was conversational, terrifying in its calm. "Marco, get Sophia out of here." "No." I surprised myself with the force of the word. "Not yet." Dante's eyes snapped to mine, something dangerous and possessive flaring in their depths. "Sophia, I need to tell you something first." My voice steadied as I held his gaze. "Before anything else happens, I need you to know." Understanding flickered across his face. He holstered his weapon and crossed to me in 3 strides, cutting the zip ties with a knife that appeared from nowhere. His hands were gentle as he helped me stand, checking me over for injuries. "Tell me," he commanded softly, his hands cupping my face. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the crumpled pregnancy test. "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Everyone in the warehouse froze, but I only saw Dante. Saw the shock ripple across his features, followed by something that looked like wonder, fear, and fierce possession all at once. "You're..." He couldn't finish the sentence, his eyes dropping to my stomach. "About 6 weeks, I think. I just found out. I was going to tell you, but then..." Tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. "I was so afraid I'd never get to tell you." His hands moved to my stomach, pressing gently against the flat plane, and something in his expression cracked open. "Mine," he breathed. "You're carrying my child." "Yes." The kiss he gave me then was desperate, claiming, a vow made without words. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. "Marco, take her to the car, now. And if anyone so much as breathes in her direction, shoot them." "Dante," I started. "I have to finish this, Piccola. But I swear to you, I'll be right behind you." He kissed me again, Softer this time. Go. Keep our baby safe. Marco escorted me out, and as the warehouse doors closed behind us, I heard screams start. I didn't look back. Some things I'd learned were better left unseen. An hour later, Dante returned to the penthouse, his hands washed clean, but his eyes still carrying the shadow of what he'd done. He found me on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, one hand pressed protectively against my stomach. He knelt before me, his head bowing to rest against my knees. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. It wasn't your fault. My hands found his hair, threading through the dark strands. They made their choice. I destroyed them. His voice was matter of fact. Every single one. They'll never threaten you or our child again. Good. The words should have horrified me. Instead, it felt like justice. He looked up, his eyes searching mine. A baby. We're having a baby. Is this okay? I know we never discussed. Okay? He laughed, the sound raw and genuine. Sophia, you're giving me everything I never knew I wanted. A family. A real family. Not the one built on blood and obligation, but one built on vulnerability crossing his features. On love. You love me? I needed to hear it again. Needed to know last night's confession wasn't just fear talking, more than I thought possible. He rose, pulling me into his arms. You came into my world terrified and desperate, and somehow you tamed the monster. You made me want to be better, to build something that won't crumble under the weight of violence. I didn't tame anything, I protested. You're still dangerous. For you. To protect you. His hand covered mine on my stomach. And now, to protect them. Our child will grow up safe, Sophia, I swear it. Over the next months, as my body changed and grew, so did our lives. Dante became fiercely protective, almost obsessively so. He moved business meetings to accommodate my doctor's appointments. He had the penthouse child-proofed months before it was necessary. He read parenting books with the same intensity he brought to business deals, and he loved me with a ferocity that sometimes scared me, but always anchored me. The night I went into labor, 7 months after that first encounter in the restaurant kitchen, Dante held my hand through every contraction, his face pale but determined. And when our daughter finally arrived, tiny, perfect, with my eyes and his dark hair, he cried. I'd never seen him cry before. The monster wept over his daughter, holding her like she was made of glass and starlight. Isabella, he whispered, naming her after his grandmother. My little queen. As I lay in the hospital bed, exhausted and euphoric, watching Dante cradle our daughter with infinite tenderness, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that rain-soaked kitchen to this moment, from a desperate woman scrubbing counters to a mother building a family with the most dangerous man in the city, it shouldn't have worked. We shouldn't have worked. But somehow, against all logic and reason, we did. I love you, I told him, the words coming easily now. He looked up from our daughter, his eyes shining. I love you too. Both of you. My family. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Thank you for being brave enough to take my hand that night. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. I whispered back. Outside the hospital window, the city glittered in the darkness, full of danger and possibility. But inside this room, we were safe, protected by love, and a man who would burn the world to keep us whole. I'd made a deal with a monster and found my salvation. And as Dante began to sing softly to our daughter in Italian, his voice carrying lullabies his grandmother had sung to him, I knew I'd make the same choice again, every single time.